Can I please introduce Richard Burgon?
Now I know what this is like. This is a bit like when I go to see my favourite band, Iron Maiden. And even if the support act is quite good, I just want them to get off stage so the main act can come and do the gig. So I'm under no illusions. I know you want it to be quick. I know you don't want it to last long. I'll keep it as brief as possible, but I will exercise my privileges as a Leeds MP and rattle on for a bit. Some of this stuff that I'm going to say tonight, I've said before, but repetition is not a novel phenomenon in politics, and I do think there are some things which need saying again and again and again until those people who are out of touch in Westminster and out of touch in the media get the message. I want to start off by thanking you. I want to start off by thanking each and every one of you in this room and the 1,000 people who are outside. I want to thank you for making history. The truth is that most people who aren't up themselves, most people who aren't in love with themselves, don't realise that they're making history. But all of you in this room and all the people out there did make history. Just a few Wednesdays ago. Let me take you back. Of course, I'm talking about the Chilcot inquiry. Let me take you back to the 15th of February 2003, when 2 million people marched against the proposed invasion of Iraq. I, like many of you, got the bus down from Leeds to London. I, like many of you, marched with 2 million other people. And I, like many of you, saw Jeremy Corbyn speak in Hyde Park in London that day. And I heard Jeremy Corbyn, who I'd never seen speak before, talk about his fears of what would happen in Iraq, what would happen in the Middle East, and what would happen around the world if we made the grave mistake of supporting George Bush's proposed invasion of Iraq. And on that day, on the 15th of February 2003, I never imagined that one day I'd be the Labour Socialist Member of Parliament for the area I'm from. On that day, on the 15th of February 2003, I never imagined that the man I saw speaking that day, Jeremy Corbyn, would be elected all those years later as our focus leader. And on that day, on the 15th of February 2003, I never imagined that all those years later, I'd be sat on the front bench in Parliament, not too far from Dennis Skinner, on the day that the leader of the Labour Party stood up and apologised to the people of Iraq, apologised to the British people, apologised to the families of British servicemen and British service women for the decision of the previous Labour leader, Tony Blair, to support George Bush's invasion of Iraq. And the truth is, sisters and brothers, that there are those in the establishment, in Westminster, in the media, and maybe even a bit closer to home, that didn't want Jeremy Corbyn to be Labour leader at all, but didn't want him to be Labour leader on the day that the Iraq inquiry was published. And so that's a rather long, rambling way of me getting round to the point of saying that without each and every single one of you, there wouldn't have been a Labour leader making that apology on that day. History was made! History was made! And the world listened! If it wasn't for you, it wouldn't have happened! So ordinary people can make history, not just in this country, but around the world. And the good news is that the history-making process in which you're so intimately involved isn't over yet. There's a lot more history to be made by you and a lot more socialist history to be made as well. So I don't think, looking around this room, that you're a bad bunch. Whatever other people say, the struggle that got me interested in politics, interested in class politics, interested in socialism, was the miners' strike. And who can forget the way that striking miners, women against pit closure activists, were all denounced by the establishments as brick throwers, as thugs, as bullies, and in the case of miners, as misogynists. It was totally wrong, it was totally unfair, and it was designed to turn people against them. It was designed to turn the public against them. Their only crime in the eyes of the establishment was to be a group of working class people getting together to organise for a better society and to take on the ruling elite. So, in 2016, I and others are not going to stand by whilst all of you decent women and men in this room and across the country are decried as thugs, brick throwers, misogynists and bullies. It's simply not right. It's simply morally wrong to call hundreds of thousands of people those names. It's simply wrong to dismiss and demonise hundreds of thousands of decent people in that way. Of course it's important that MPs aren't abused and threatened. Of course that's important, but it's very important as well that just as we respect MPs as fellow party members, as fellow citizens and human beings, it's important as well that members of Parliament respect those who, unlike them, aren't paid £75,000 a year for their contribution to politics. The MPs have had to say, the MPs have made their nominations for leader. And, is anybody from East Leeds here? Yeah. Good to hear it. You'll get your chance as party members in East Leeds next Wednesday. So listen to me arguing for Jeremy Corbyn. So listen to someone else arguing for Owen Smith. And you'll get the chance to make your decision as you should do. And I look forward to all the other constituency Labour parties, whether it be Leeds Central, Leeds West or all the others. I look forward to them giving the members the opportunity. The MPs have had their say, the MPs have nominated. Now it's time for you to be given the dignity and the voice of nominating for leader, whoever the hell you want. The myth, while I'm up here, the myth is that socialists aren't interested in winning. What a load of rubbish. But I won't be taking any lectures from people who lost the last two general elections. Anybody would almost think that Labour had won every single election until Jeremy Corbyn took over as leader and then something went wrong. I might be misreading the history books, but we lost in 2015 and we lost in 2010 and we lost 5 million Labour votes between 1997 and 2010. And in Scotland, some of the people saying that they're irresponsibly heading for electoral disaster. Some of those people engineered the greatest defeat in the Labour Party's history, the decimation of Labour in Scotland from 48 MPs to 1 MP. And at the same time, the bond of trust between the Labour Party and the public frayed to almost breaking point. So I think that maybe our ideas of how to win elections should be listened to as well. And as Imran has mentioned, there have been parliamentary by-election victories under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. Oldham, which we won with an increased percentage of the votes. Sheffield, which we won with an increased percentage of the votes. Tooting, which we won with an increased percentage of the votes. And Ogmore, which we won well as well. And as Imran said, and I don't mind repeating people. Usually I repeat myself, I'm happy to repeat Imran, a West Yorkshire lad like me. We won in Liverpool, in Bristol, in Salford and in London, those mayor elections. I want to make a special mention of our excellent mayor in Bristol, Marvin Reeves, because he was the candidate a few years ago, an excellent candidate who, despite his vision, despite his ability, despite his phenomenal work rate, sadly, Labour didn't win when he stood for mayor a few years ago. But this time, the combination of Jeremy Corbyn's leadership and his ideas, and a phenomenal candidate in Marvin Rees, saw us walk the mayoral election in Bristol. And we got decent results in council elections too, particularly here in Leeds. And don't forget that Labour was 2 points ahead in the polls on the morning of the European Union referendum results. Our position in the polls has plummeted since. Why? I can probably give you about 172 reasons why. It's a great shame that colleagues who I call friends, colleagues who I still respect, colleagues who I'm still proud to campaign alongside, it was a great shame they let the Tories off the hook. This manufactured leadership row, taking the Conservatives off the front page and putting us on the front page for all the bad reasons instead. Imran was right to say, we are interested in winning. We've won before, we've won again. We are about winning power with principle. That's what we're about. There's not a choice between one or the other. And I do want to make mention of the fact I'm very proud to be serving in the Shadow Cabinet under Jeremy's leadership as Shadow Justice Secretary. And I do want to make a couple of points about that position. I was a lawyer, a trade union lawyer, doing employment tribunal work here in Leeds, and I did that for 10 years before being elected as an MP. And I remember the day, yeah, it was workaround reports, wasn't it? 10 years of achievements. A bit David Brett now, wasn't it? Sorry. Joking apart, I remember the day when I lodged an employment tribunal claim for an unfairly treated worker for the first time since the Conservative Lib Dem coalition had introduced employment tribunal fees. I'll never forget how I felt when I looked at the computer when I'd finished filling in the form online and it said, "Customer, please enter your credit card details." Doesn't that say a lot when people attempting to assert their statutory right to be paid the minimum wage, when people attempting to assert the statutory right not to be sexually harassed at work, when people attempting to assert the statutory right not to be subjected to disability discrimination at work? Isn't it a sad state of affairs when they're viewed as consumers or customers and not as citizens attempting to assert their statutory rights? And when I read one late rainy night the 2015 Labour Party General Election Manifesto, which I was very pleased and proud to stand on and contain some good policies, when I read that, maybe it was a lawyer in me, maybe it was a cynic in me, the paragraph on employment tribunal fees I didn't quite understand. It said, "We will abolish the Conservatives' unfair employment tribunal fee system." Now, what did that mean? Did it mean we were going to reduce the fees? Reduce them by a bit? Reduce them by a lot? No ifs, no buts. A Labour government with Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister and myself as Justice Secretary will abolish employment tribunal fees. No ifs, no buts. A policy of access to justice for all, because if everyone doesn't have access to justice, then justice is just a theory, not a reality. And if Jeremy Corbyn is elected with your help as Prime Minister, then we will have a Labour Prime Minister and a Justice Secretary who thinks that there are some things in society, some things in life which shouldn't be subjected to the profit motive. And I'll tell you this, our prison systems is one of them. I don't believe that the incarceration of human beings should be making millionaires have the opportunity to live in bigger mansions. Forgive me if I'm being oversimplistic, but I think it's just morally wrong. And that's what our politics has to be about. If our politics isn't about, we can be doing better things on a Saturday night than listen to me rant on. The truth is, and I'm nearly finished, don't worry, the truth is that the current way of doing things isn't working for the majority. And I do want to use our city of Leeds as a case study. We hear talk of a northern powerhouse. I'm afraid I just think it's southern hot air and no amount of fancy buildings, no amount of glitter for the minority can erase the fact that 20% of people in our city live in poverty and hundreds of thousands of people in our city are on the very edge of it. By and large, since 1979, whichever party has been in power, despite all the good things we did do in government between 1997 and 2010, whichever party has been in power, by and large, neoliberal economics, free market fundamentalism has by and large ruled the roost. And what has that period of neoliberalism resulted in? That period of neoliberalism has resulted in the fact that these days, a 21-year-old leaving university in East Leeds or in Leeds has less chance of a council house, less chance of a mortgage, less chance of a well-paid, secure job than a 15-year-old leaving school with no qualifications had 40 years ago. And the system isn't working for us, and we do need change. For the first time in 100 years, working class people face the reality that they can't say with any confidence that their children will do better than they did or have more opportunities than they did. And I think that our communities and our children deserve better than politicians posing for photos on former pit and factory sites, telling our kids they should be grateful for living wage jobs. Our people deserve better than that. Leeds deserves better than that. Britain deserves better than that. And the world deserves better than that. And on the subject of Leeds, on the subject of the North, I want to scotch another myth which I kind of managed to successfully scotch in somewhere called Salford last weekend, and that is a myth peddled by people like Polly Toynbee, that well-known proletarian in The Guardian and elsewhere, that somehow Jeremy doesn't understand working class people, that somehow it's fair to denounce Jeremy as some kind of Islington-obsessed croissant muncher. We eat croissants in Leeds as well, and I ain't going to be lectured by Polly Toynbee on what working class people do and don't eat. But on a serious point, there is nothing London-centric about Jeremy, however well respected as he is in London, however much positive change is achieved in London as he has. I'll tell you this. The shadow cabinet of which I'm a member, I'm proud to be a member of it for very many reasons, but I've never seen a shadow cabinet with as many working class northern voices in it as we have now. I'm thinking of people like Angela Rayner, the shadow education secretary. I'm thinking of people like Rebecca Long-Bailey, the shadow treasury minister. I'm thinking of people like striking miner Dave Anderson. I'm thinking of people like Graham Norris and many others besides. And by the way, when I say northern voices, I don't just mean people who happen to represent northern constituencies. I mean working class people from those northern constituencies representing those northern constituencies. And I want to bring my remarks to a conclusion by talking. Feel free to cheer when Sam nearly finished, it's fine. By talking about the concept of leadership. Isn't it true that a lot of learning has been going on recently? In the course of this struggle, and it has been a struggle, I've learned a lot about myself, I've learned a lot about you, I've learned a lot about my friends and comrades in Parliament, in the Labour movement and beyond. But some other people have learned as well, or maybe they failed to learn the lesson. Didn't you understand Jeremy Corbyn? Haven't you been watching for the past 30 years? Did they think that he was a conventional Westminster politician? Did they think that if you get 15 shadow cabinet members to resign on TV or otherwise, it'd go, oh, fair play, I understand the rules. Never mind about 600,000 members, I'm off home, that was good, cheers. He was never going to do it. If people couldn't stop Jeremy Corbyn speaking up for gay rights when they demonised him for doing it, then shadow cabinet members resigning wasn't going to make him do it either. If they couldn't stop him arguing for peace negotiations in Northern Ireland by disgracefully defining the terrorists, then 15 shadow cabinet members resigning wasn't going to get him to shut up either. If they couldn't stop him speaking out against the free market fundamentalist politics and economics which created the banking crisis and has made people here in Leeds pay the price for a crisis which they didn't cause, then they weren't going to get however long the string of resignations was. They weren't going to let him give up on this project. They weren't going to persuade him to give up on all of you. So, Jeremy Corbyn has showed steel. Jeremy Corbyn has shown conviction. Jeremy Corbyn has shown the power of ideas. Jeremy Corbyn has shown, as you have done, the power of collectivism. And I want to finish with a quote by someone not from Leeds, someone not from Islington, someone from the deep south, and by that I don't mean Surrey. I mean Martin Luther King, a truly great human being, who said, a true leader doesn't follow the consensus. A true leader shapes the consensus. Isn't it the case that Jeremy Corbyn is a true leader? But as Jeremy himself says more eloquently than I, it ain't just about him. It ain't even just about his ideas. It's about all of you. I started off this speech by congratulating you all for making history. When I think of that quote from Martin Luther King, I don't just think of Jeremy Corbyn. I think of all of you, because you are all leaders in your community. You are all leaders collectively in our society. Political change doesn't just come from individual leaders. Political change comes when hundreds of thousands of people get together. So I believe you've made history already. I believe together you all make history again. So I thank you for your patience, and I salute you for what you've done. And friends, sisters and brothers, I salute you for what you're about to do. Carry on making history together.